Okay, um, this goes back to a story of about 1986, and my husband had brought the book Crisis of Conscience home from the library. I was embarrassed. I was probably scared, but I was curious, and so I read one chapter, and I read the chapter Double Standards. Allie had been trying to get me to, oh no, that's later.
I was 6 years old in 1986. I was not reading Crisis of Conscience. My life would have turned out very different had I.
Okay. The reason I'm bringing up this story is because Jim brought home the book. I read one chapter. It was the chapter entitled Double Standards. And it talked about the standard that the Watchtower sent and delivered to Malawi when those brothers were asked to buy an identity card for $1, but none of them would, at the advice of the headquarters in New York. And then, which I knew because I followed that terrible history for the brothers very carefully when it was happening. But Ray Franz brought out how what they were doing when questioned about a situation in Mexico was very, very different. What happened there is that they wrote and said, the brothers are bribing some Mexico officials because it's common practice to get them to sign off on what was it called, Allie?
That they had served in the military.
That they had served in the military. Well, not served, but taken the test and were ready to go. And the Watchtower in New York said, well, it's up to their conscience. And don't expect any help from us, but you can follow your conscience on that. And if it's common practice, well, then go for it. I'm, of course, paraphrasing. So it shocked me. I just never knew anything about the Mexico situation. And so I definitely viewed it as a red flag, a double red flag, if you will. And I asked myself, what should I do with this information? Should I leave the religion? By then it was my whole life for 30 years. And why didn't I heed the information that I had read? The only thing I can come up with is that I had two small children, and
your entire social circle, your identity, and you thought it was better than all the other religions out there. So where else would you go instead of who else would I go to?
Yeah, it was always the question of where do I go? And that, Allie, that's such a good point, because the John 6:68, is it? Scripture, everybody answers, where should we go, Lord? But that's not it. Peter asked, to whom shall we go? There was nowhere else to go but Jesus.
Yes, in other words, you saw a big red flag when you read that one chapter out of Crisis of Conscience, but you proceeded to go into the Watchtower shark-infested waters still because it's what you knew, and you had two little kids, and you were sleep deprived, and you didn't feel like doing more research.
No, I'm sure all those things figured in, and enough said on that. I have a footnote on that. Recently, I had watched the movie Jonestown, Paradise Lost, about the horrible tragedy in Guyana. And the movie ends with a very brief interview of the son of Jim Jones, whose name was Stephen Jones. And it says, why don't people break free? And he said that if I have to set the stage. He was not in the compound at the time that Jim Jones gave the directions to drink the mix, which came to be called the Kool-Aid. And the reason was he was about 20 years old and off to a basketball competition in a city nearby. And so he was asked what his feelings were about that event, and he says, perhaps out of loyalty to everybody else there, I would have drunk with them. If I had been there, it was so important to me of how I was perceived by the people of my community, so much that it might have taken me to my death. Ask yourself, what would someone have to do to you to do something that you couldn't possibly believe you were capable of? Examine that. Learn from it. Don't judge it. Don't stand separate from it. Be willing to stand in the shoes of the people you are judging.
And that's a powerful reminder. Sometimes I might come across in my videos as angry, resentful of Watchtower, but no, I participated in these atrocities myself when I was a witness. And that's partly why I do the little bit of activism, or whatever you want to call it, that I have done, because I feel bad that I shunned friends. I feel stupid that I didn't do more research, that I didn't practice what I was preaching on doorsteps, uninvited. So, yeah. We're not better than Jehovah's Witnesses. We love them. We hope that they can be free.